Welcome to Find Your Tribe podcast. We're broadcasting from beautiful Portland, Oregon. My name is Annie Lavender Weller. I'm a member of the Turtle Mountain Band, the Chippewa Indians, and co-founder of the Leadership Lab, which is a career, academic, and transitional coaching nonprofit. I'm also a serial entrepreneur, author, and International Coaching Federation, ACC certified business coach and consultant. Welcome to my podcast, Find Your Tribe. Well, welcome to another episode of Find Your Tribe. Today, I have Lee Weinstein. He is a former Nike public relations leader who is now an entrepreneur. He has worked for United States congressman and an Oregon governor and served on numerous nonprofit boards of directors. Lee is president of PR Boutiques International, an association of 40 PR boutique agencies worldwide, and is an experienced facilitator and frequent public speaker. In 2000, his wife, Melinda, invented the intentional life planning process soon after they were married and while they were discussing where they wanted to live. Their book, Right, Open, Act, will be available December 31st of this year. And also, Lee and Melinda own Weinstein PR, a boutique public relations agency based in Portland, Oregon, and the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, which is one of my favorite places in the entire world to ever be. So welcome to Find Your Tribe, Lee.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so as I always start out my podcast, what does Find Your Tribe mean to you?
Well, I think, I guess I would say two things. I mean, obviously, we as human beings have been tribal up until the modern age, and I think it's been very important to our evolution, and I think it remains important. So I think it's something we as a culture need to look even more at. But I think personally for me today about what tribal means and finding my tribe is, I think, and I'm a little skittish on this, but I want to find my, like-minded people, but I also want people who are going to challenge me and who aren't exactly of my mind, but who I can trust, who I can talk to, who I can fit in with, who I know will have my back. And while I have that discussion, and maybe we're having a very frank discussion and we disagree, they'll still have my back. So, but it's a great place for positivity, shared values, and just overall acceptance.
So how has that process been for you? I mean, how did that start? Did it start recently, or? Well,
it's really interesting. I read a really excellent book that was based on an Atlantic article, and I can't remember the name of the book at the moment, but it was about basically veterans and how veterans are being treated today and how they should be treated. And one of the things that this author went back and talked about was the importance of tribes, and that tribes used to take care of everybody, regardless. I mean, there were people who may not have had the brains that functioned like everybody else's, and they would take care of them. And everybody felt safe and accompanied. And however, if you violated the tribe, and went against them, particularly if you stole, you were out, you were banished, and that was one of the worst things you could ever do. So I do think that notion of trust is absolutely critical. So for me, that was a really sticking point, and I think it gets back to how do we take care of, we have so many people that need taken care of, and how do we make sure that we do that?
So going back to the tribal, I know you happen to be Jewish, and so when Ken was on, he's like, ha ha ha.
Yes, he did.
And I happen to be Jewish too.
Yes.
And Native American.
Yes.
So, just the whole aspect of being a tribe. I mean, you and I are part of a tribe because when we first met, I was PR, you were PR.
Right.
And we were surrounded by these journalists, and we kind of protected each other a little bit. Do you believe that's what you have now with your tribe, is that protection and that camaraderie, that community? Camaraderie.
Yeah. No, well, I think you can belong to many tribes, and I certainly belong to a PR tribe, and it's really funny. I mean, PR people are cut from the same cloth. I learned that a long time ago working for Nike. I'll never forget, we were over in Sun River for a retreat, and Melinda and I decided to check out early and let people go. And the place was, we were outside, and everybody was laughing and screaming. They were doing quarters, and I just thought, gosh, we PR people are cut from the same cloth. There's a lot of traits there. So I think PR tribe, definitely Jewish tribe. I was part of the Nike tribe. My family is a tribe, so and that's been really interesting. One of the advents with Facebook, it's been very interesting. My family, the extended family, has gotten much closer because all of a sudden we can communicate. So I now have all these cousins and other people that I didn't even know I had, but we're all part of this tribe that's genetic. So it's really lovely to have many tribes and be part of that. But knowing, again, it goes back to trust and acceptance and taking care of one another.
So how did you get into PR?
How did I get into PR?
Because I know how I did.
Yeah.
I was better behind the camera than in front of the camera.
Right.
That's kind of how I started.
Yeah.
But with you, how did you start?
Well, it was interesting. I was very interested in politics when I went to Lewis and Clark College, majored in political science, was very involved in student government, and I thought I was going to run for public office. And then my first job out of college was working for then Congressman Ron Wyden from here in Oregon. And I went back to DC, and one of the things Ron is extremely good at is communicating with people. And I got to watch his press operation in action. And Lois Lindsay Davis was then press secretary. Gary Conkling was the administrative assistant there. My best friend, Bob Applegate, eventually became press secretary. And I got to watch them and Ron, who's just such a great communicator. And as part of that, I just realized I'm really interested in this. And later on in life, I went back and realized, I've always been interested in communications. When I was in 6th grade, I published my own newspaper and sold it door to door for a quarter in my whole neighborhood. So I've always been doing communications. So it was really an interesting marriage back then of politics and communications. And then when I came back to Oregon and worked for my alma mater in admissions, I realized that communications was going to be really part of what I did. So I started doing admissions publications for Lewis and Clark and some other things. And then that one thing kind of led to the other. So it was sort of a career path I wasn't sure of. But if you look at it, public relations does a lot where there's a political overlay. One of the things that's been really interesting for me, being now gone from Nike for 10 years, is now I'm very involved in public affairs. All of our clients have stakeholders that are really important to them, and we need to look at how do we connect them. We don't do any lobbying or anything like that, but so it's been an interesting marriage of my political background and that degree and all the stuff I've learned since my days with Ron.
So going back to another question is what is PR to you? Because I worked with a lot of celebrity chefs and I dealt with, the stuff that you kind of see on TV a little bit, but it's not as fun.
Right.
I'll just let everybody know out there. I think people have heard me talk about some of the, especially with Ken, the crazy crap that I had to put up with, holding Coke mirrors at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, indeed.
This is going down
Not
the
mentioning
toilet.
any names.
Not mentioning any names, which is really difficult for me to do. Because everybody thinks they're angels.
Yes.
Which that means I did my job as a PR person.
That is true. Very true.
But what does PR mean to you? Because I know people I don't think they quite understand what PR is.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Most people don't know what PR is. Most people think they can do it, however. So that's an interesting, I think, conundrum in that as well. But, it's interesting. I have 2 daughters who are now 23 and 25, and and they've watched me do PR since they were born. And it was really interesting. A couple years ago, Sophie, our youngest, turned to me. She goes, forever, actually, I'll just back up. Forever, they were saying, Dad, what is it you do? What is it you do exactly? And then about 2 years ago, Sophie turned to me and she goes, I finally figured it out. So it is kind of hard to, I think, define what PR is and to have people really understand it, even if you live with a PR person 24/7 as they did. But ultimately for me, what PR is, and it's a great title. It's public relations, and it's really about your relations with your publics and how do you manage those relations. And manage is the key word. And I absolutely hate the word spin, which I know some journalists love to throw in our faces. It's not that. It's about how do you manage your relationships. And relationships affect reputations. And relationships come from a variety of means. They come from this, where we're looking at each other in the eye and seeing each other and getting reacquainted, to all sorts of other things. It used to mean, I think, heavily media relations, but now it's social media. It's all sorts of things. But it's about managing relations. Who's important to you? What's your reputation? How are you managing that? Are you thinking about it? And in all of that, lots of different tools get used.
I think, our job has changed. I'm always going to be, you're always going to be in PR. Doesn't matter.
Right.
Now I'm hiring people to do PR for me. But I think a lot of the PR, when, I did a lot of media relations, those talking points and,
Yep.
The journalists and stuff, they were like, oh, you're spinning. It's like, no, what we're trying to do is communicate
Right.
in a clear, concise line of communication so we can get our point across.
Exactly.
Because a lot of journalists nowadays like to scream at us.
Some do, and the
Not
roles
saying
are
any
changing.
names.
Exactly. Well, and it's interesting. Having been, my wife and I founded Weinstein PR 10 years ago this year, and it's been very interesting. Up until last year, it was the first time we'd ever sat down with a new client, and said, "What do you want to communicate?" And they said, "Here are our key messages." Not one client up until last year, and I can't tell you who the client was, but had a set of key messages. So if you don't know what you want to say about yourself, how are you sure that your publics know about it, including your employees? What are you saying on your website? What are all these other things that are informed by key messages? And it's absolutely critical. And I think for journalists, they may not have worked on this side of communications. They're great storytellers and investigators and all sorts of other things, but they may not have been on this side advising a client or advising ourselves how to communicate and how to put together a set of key messages, for instance.
So I want to ask you another question about social media, but first I want to go back a little bit in regards. You were with Wyden, and then after Wyden, you came back to Portland,
right?
And then what happened between that and Nike? Or did you go to Nike? I mean,
no, it was an interesting.
Because I'm wondering, did we know each other when you were? It must have been when you were at Nike.
We probably did. Probably did. No, hey, Oregon's a small town. Everybody knows everybody.
Or you know somebody that knows somebody.
Yes, and don't flip anybody off at a four-way stop because it'll get back to your mother. It's very true. So I did the Ron Wyden 3 years, which was fantastic, and we're still very good friends. And I actually have to say he's just done such a great job maturing into a senior senator. I mean, he's amazing. Did the Lewis and Clark stint, and then my political hero at the time was Neil Goldschmidt, who ran for governor, and I volunteered on his campaign and helped there, and then got a job in his administration, actually working for Ted Kalingoski, who was insurance commissioner. Which was fantastic, working for Ted, who's just one of the really great
That was kind of like the golden era of Oregon and government.
It was amazing. Well, we had a long golden era.
Yeah, we
go
did.
back to McCall and Straub and lots of people that were fantastic.
We're very blessed.
Yeah, we were very blessed.
Yes.
Blessed. We're blessed to live in Oregon, for gosh sakes.
Yes, I call it our little bubble.
It is our, and thank goodness. Thank goodness we're just stuck between California and Washington. And
Exactly.
A lot of people still haven't been here, and they're still coming. But so I did that, and then I moved actually in the governor's office. I was assistant press secretary for 2 years there. And then my wife at the time got a job teaching at San Francisco State. So that's back in the day when they had classified ads in the newspaper. And I actually applied for a job in San Francisco that I got through a classified ad, working for the largest AIDS agency in the Bay Area, which was Project Open Hand, which was the first AIDS feeding organization in the world, and a wonderful organization. So I did a stint in nonprofit, and which was actually one of my proudest career points then. And then my wife wanted to have a child and not work. You cannot work on a nonprofit salary in the Bay Area.
I know.
And have just one of you making an income on a nonprofit. So we decided to come back to Oregon. And I'm a big believer in luck, timing, and who you know in terms of jobs. And it was really funny that the day we decided to come back here, I called a friend and said, "Hey, who do you know at Nike?" And she said, "Oh, Lee." This was Debbie Kennedy. And she said, "Kay Bryant is at Nike, and you should call her." And so I hung up the phone, called Kay Bryant, and she said, "It's really funny you're calling. I'm writing your job description right now." And I got a job in 1992 working for Nike to publish their employee newspaper. So they'd had a paper a long time ago. They were restarting it, and I got to be the person who wrote, photographed, and desktop published the newspaper at a time when Nike was a $2 billion, 2,000-person company. And by the time I left in 2007, it was a $17 billion company, and we had 17,000 employees. So I had a wonderful 15 years at Nike. But the 15 years for me was long enough. And I literally had one of those moments when I decided, I was looking in the mirror, shaving one morning, I was like, do I want to be there 20 years? Do I want to finish the career there? And the guy in the mirror said, absolutely not. Actually, he used one of your words. I said, fuck no.
Fuck no.
And so I thought, God, I got to get out and do something else. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So it was an interesting transition.
So how did you transition?
How did I transition?
Because it's hard to explain how you transition.
Yeah.
Because people have been asking me, how did you go from PR marketing into now you're a business coach? And I'm like, well, it's really easy.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting process. I had, so I knew what I didn't want to do, because I'd seen a lot of people come to Nike who really had no business being there. They didn't come from a sports background. They didn't understand our mission and values and just what it meant to be Nike, be irreverent, and all these things. It is kind of
a cult tribe.
It is. It's
more of a cult than a tribe.
When you work
but it's a good cult.
It's a wonderful.
It's a positive cult.
When you work for Phil Knight and Mark Parker and a bunch of other, Juliette Moran, who's one of the best leaders that we had there, you do have to do that. You have to drink the Kool-Aid and go. And we had a wonderful time working there. But to reinvent it was a really interesting time because I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I'm a very goal-driven person. And to look in your mirror and go, oh my God, I have no idea what I want to do, was shocking and really scary. But luckily, I decided I'd take some time to really look into it. And one of my favorite books of all time is Letters to a Young Poet by Rainier Rilke.
I'm writing that down.
Rilke was a master poet and writer extraordinaire. And this book really talks about the importance of listening to your soul. And it's a very short book. It's like 110 pages. You can read it on a beach in Hawaii. But his view is all answers are inside. And so that was my master sort of philosophy in this career change, is like, I've got to find out what's inside of me. And once I do that, I'll know what I want to do next. So I really took some time. I worked with a fabulous career coach, Ruth Luban, who has a wonderful book called How to Be a Corporate Refugee. And I just took time to look at it. Did a lot of journaling. I read The Artist's Way, and every morning I wrote about 20 minutes unedited in my journal about career and what is it I wanted to do. And ultimately, I was able to access my soul and figure out, I'm going to go do this. And I knew I wanted to potentially live in the Gorge. And I thought, let's see about hanging the shingle out and see what happens and be an entrepreneur like you, Annie. So that's what I decided to do.
So can you take me a little bit through your goal process? Mm-hmm. Or, how did you reach the conclusion that this is what I want my company to be and look like? I know now, since I opened my company, I'm becoming a B corporation, a benefit corporation.
Very good.
And,
very good.
When I'm Mac Pritchard that I had been on, him and I have lunch once a month at Mother's. And
wonderful Mac.
Wonderful Mac, and just like talking about how he's done it, and if I have any crazy questions about how do I really get my mission, because I love working with minorities and companies that are trying to struggle, at that second, third hill.
Yep.
But how did you?
It's a good question.
We're kind of lucky.
Yeah. No.
Now,
very.
I've been lucky to have coaches and people like Mac and Mark from Netspace and so forth to kind of put me under their little wing. But
wonderful, and we need those people.
But
that's fantastic.
how did you do it? I remember starting my own business, but it's hard to go from even this day and age.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it goes back to, trusting your gut and what you know and what your values are. As part of that job process, the career process, I had made a gazillion lists. I had Word documents for probably 30 different lists of things, including what did I really want to make sure I had in my next job. And I keep checklists on lots of things. So before we take a client now, I have a checklist of about 20 things that I look at to make sure they're the right client, because not every client's going to be a fit for us, nor are we for them. So really want to make sure that fit is really good. So for me, it was I'd never started a business. I'd always worked for other people. So starting a business was a big risk. But what I did in the process of that is I wrote a business plan. So I took a half-day business planning class at Oregon Entrepreneur Network, and then I went and wrote a business plan. And as part of that, I identified my mission and my values for this company. Actually, if you go back and look at it, it's almost 11 years old now, it still is it's very relevant. The client list, the prospective client list is slightly different, but it's really relevant. And so that has guided us all the way through this. It was also interesting. So our very first client was Providence Health and Services. And it was a really funny story. So I hadn't started officially the business yet. We're going to start October 7th, 2007. And in August, I got a call from a guy at Providence, Chuck, and he said, hey, we want to have you help us with some employee communications things. And I said, and Marcia really wants you to work with us. And I said, well, I'm not starting the business until October. And basically Marcia Williams, who's a good dear friend now, turned to him and said, ask him if he wants the job or not. So I started the job in August. Thank you, Marcia. And but it was really interesting when I got to that very first meeting with my very first client. I got there an hour early in the parking lot, and all of a sudden I realized I don't have a brand plan. What is the Weinstein PR brand plan? And I actually sat in the car getting ready for that meeting, thinking about what is our brand? How did we always want to be perceived? What did we sound like? What did we look like? And we have a brand plan that we've stuck to for 10 years. And we'd go back and update that and check it. But it does ultimately, I think, come back to values. What do we really care about? We won't work for any client who doesn't have a connection to social responsibility. If they don't care about the planet, we're not going to do that. So we don't work for the coal companies coming through the Columbia Gorge. Never would do that. And so that's put us in a slightly different position because we do turn some things down. And some people don't. But that's, it's like, hey, I didn't quit Nike to go work for somebody who didn't have the values that I care about.
Yeah, you didn't leave Nike to become a PR, what is it, like a wheel?
No.
Or one of the things I used to tell people, when they ask me what I did is I turned shit into sunshine.
Right.
I polished turds all day. I make things sound really, really amazing and great.
Yeah.
But most of the times they are great and wonderful.
Yes.
People just don't know how to explain that.
Right, exactly. Or tell the story around it.
Or tell the story around it. And so that was, what
That's
I did.
a very good point.
So I know that your wife and you both work at your firm, at
yes,
your company.
we do.
So who does what? How does that work? Because I know some people working together is a hard thing when you're husband and wife.
It's been fun. Well, we know who the smarter one is in the operation. Well, it's been wonderful being able to work together. And about a month into the business, Melinda came in and said, you need some help. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, because I'd never run a business. And Melinda has been a senior administrative assistant at Nike forever. She assisted Mark Parker.
Is that how you guys met?
That's how we met.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, that's such a cute story.
Yeah, we met there, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me, other than my two daughters. But she came in and said, you need some help. And so she rolled up her sleeves and started helping me. It was very funny, though. We were sitting next to each other the first month, had side-by-side desks. And at a certain point, one day she came in and said, I'm going to move you to the other end of the house. We have a home office out in the Gorge. So she's like, I'm going to move you down there. I'm doing it. You don't have to be involved in this. But she said, you talk too loud on the phone and you breathe funny. And she said, it drives me crazy because what happens, I don't know if you do this as a PR person, but I love doing PR and I get really excited about things.
It's passion.
It's passion.
It's passion.
It's so much fun. It is so much fun, and it is passion. But I get so excited when I have an idea, I'm writing a press release or writing a speech, I'll stop breathing because I'm like, I gotta get this idea out. And it would just drive her crazy. So we figured out how to work. Now we do meet, I work out in the Gorge Fridays and Mondays, and we do meet at noon and watch The Daily Show and enjoy each other at lunch. But then we go back to our respective areas. I have to keep the door closed to my office because I talk too loud.
Oh, so she does like the operations side,
she does the operations
and then you're like the
and contracting, yes, and then I do PR. I manage the business. We have a whole bunch of people who contract with us, and we have fun. And
you're so lucky to have that in your wife, especially because that's where entrepreneurs fall short, is that operational part.
Oh, it's huge.
And so that's where I come in.
A lot of people haven't thought of it.
Because I come in as an operational. I kind of explain what I do, like like a restaurant.
Yep.
You have the marketing, the PR, your services,
Yep.
your tables, everything looks absolutely gorgeous and
Yep.
wonderful. Then you go into the kitchen and there's one chef.
Right, exactly.
Trying, you full line of tickets.
Right.
What the hell? Trying to order food. Everything's a mess. If you walked into that kitchen, you're like, I'm never eating here again.
Right.
So that's kind of where I come in, where let's get your kitchen in order and like, let's fix this and learn how to delegate. So
Very
you're very,
true.
very lucky to be able to have
no,
that.
I'm very lucky on many, many,
Yes.
many levels.
And also living in the Gorge, which I'm very, I'll get out there one day.
So come on out. Come on out.
So after Nike, so I really want to talk. I'm really excited because I got a copy of Right Open Act.
You are one of the first to get to receive it. It literally delivered this morning in Salem.
I mean, because
from
I've been
Illinois.
because I know that you've been doing workshops. I've
Yep.
seen that on Facebook.
Yep.
So tell me about how this came up.
Well, so soon after Melinda and I got married, we were home in our new house, and I said, let's figure out what we want to do with our life together. And I brought this huge. I'm a total nerd, and I love plans. We do that as PR planners all the time.
I'm a huge planner.
Love plans. And so we brought out this huge sheet of butcher paper and laid it out. And I said, how long, Melinda, do you think you're going to live for? And she said, I'll probably live till I'm 83 to 88. And I said, well, I'm probably going to live a lot less years than you are. So I'll probably make it to maybe 78, 80 if I'm lucky. So it's the year 2000. And we wrote down the final years. So for me, it was 2000. It was like 2043 or something like that. Was going to be my end date.
That sounds so weird. 2043 sounds so weird.
Yeah, isn't that weird? It is really
Star
weird.
Trek-y.
It is. It is. But if you look at it, I mean, ultimately, what I looked at is like, okay, if we were launching Nike Shocks, and we knew we had so many years to launch it or so many days to launch it, you would know that this is your starting point on the left, and your end point is when it goes to market. In whatever year that is, what do we need to do in the steps between there? So what we ended up doing is figuring out a way to divide those years up into decades, and then we started having a very frank conversation about what it is that and I turned to Melinda, how do you want your life to be? And I started asking her questions and vice versa. And based on that, we started using sticky notes and kind of marking some things down. And it's ultimately, if you go back and look at that first thing, so one of the things we strongly believe in there's actually a book called this. If you write it down, it will make it happen.
Yes.
It's a fabulous book.
I think I did that on Audible.
Yeah, it's a great book. The title says it all.
Yeah.
And but if you go back and look at our first life plan, we had some things on there like buy a ranch in the Gorge, Lee, new job at Nike, and lots of things. Take the girls to Italy, and this, that was 5 or 10 years later, and after we got married, that we wanted to do that. But if you look at that plan, we've got 90% done that was on that original plan. And what's happened is every year since, we've either updated the plan from the last year or we've done a new plan. And then what happened for us is we then started taking some pictures from afar of the life plan and throwing it up on Facebook and just saying, hey, we're planning our life this year. And our friends went nuts.
Because I've been going nuts about it myself.
Yeah.
And that's why I know it sounds dumb, but I kind of teared up a little bit when I saw this.
You did.
It's something like that.
She did,
I know.
everybody.
Yeah, I'm passionate.
Yeah.
But it's something like I think that's missing from my husband. We do plan, and
Yep.
I'm a planner.
Yep.
But my husband's not quite as really hip about planning as
Right,
I am.
right.
He knows like we need to have goals.
Yep.
But he's not like, okay, we have to do this task, this task.
Right.
And I think if he understood like the tasks that we need to do, I think it would be a lot easier for us to achieve.
It is, and it's visual. The other lovely thing about this whole process, so one of the things that we do not do with our plan, we do not say put it on a hard drive, don't put it in an Excel document, don't throw it over here in some fancy app. It's got to be hanging on the wall and you got to look at it. I mean, the fact of the matter is our lives are phenomenally busy. We have businesses to run, we have kids, we have parents, we have all these things going on. But we also have a certain amount of years to go around the sun. What do you want to do with this, as this wonderful poet Mary Oliver said, American poet, she said, what do you want to do with your one wild and precious life? What do you want to do with that? I always get choked up when I read her quote saying that. It's just like, it's the most beautiful quote. What do you want to do? The thing that's been interesting is, so not everybody's a planner and not everybody subscribes to the belief you should have a plan for your life. One of our friends on Facebook said, I absolutely do not think I should have a plan. I just love living life. That's great.
That's great.
Fine. But on the other hand, it was really interesting. We took my dad over to Diamond, Oregon, which is down near the Steens Mountain, where he was born down in Burns, and he had not been there in 17 years. It's like, oh my gosh, what happened to the time?
That's crazy.
And so what do you want to do? I mean, there's certain things that Melinda and I always want to do. We always want to, every so often go to Hawaii or go to New York. So we've got that sort of on our plan and some other things. I think the other thing, though, that's really cool is, not every partner is going to be a planner. So how do you work together to do that? And ideally, through this workbook, people will be able to do that together. If they need help to do it, they can get some help to do it, too.
So how did you turn that whole mess or plan into this?
Yeah.
It's been, 10 years since you came up with this?
Yeah.
So is that...
Well, so back to the tribe. So we have a tribe of intentional life planners now that's been really interesting. It's been so much fun. These people on Facebook, our friends, have just been fabulous. And the reaction has just been so rich and reassuring. And then I talked to a wonderful woman named Meredith Fromke up in Seattle, who's an intuitist. So some of our friends said, can you turn it into a workbook? Can you turn it into a workshop? Mm-hmm. So we started these workshops to begin with, and we've done 4 of them around the state, which has been really fun. And we've now got an alumni crowd of almost 100 people that have been through our workshops. And they've got these darn life plans on their landings, on their stairwells, in their bedrooms and their bathrooms. One of the things that we really require everybody to do is to hang your plan up so it's always visible. Mm-hmm. So when you're walking by on the way to the laundry into the basement, you see that. It's like, oh, I wanted to go do that this year. I haven't done that this year. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do with that? And then what happened on the workbook truly is at a certain point I'm like, okay, we can keep doing speeches or workshops. That's fun. But how do we bring this to a larger audience and really get this out there? And it's been really interesting. Most people don't have life plans, don't have written life plans. It's a very small number. In fact, we're going to release that eventually. We've actually just done a survey on that with DHM Research. But most people don't have a written life plan. And
why do you think that is? Why do you think people don't have a written life plan?
I don't know. I think a lot of people just haven't thought of it. Why should I have a life plan? It's like, okay, I think people have visual things in their minds where they're thinking about, okay, you can plot out in your mind, okay, well, the kids are going to graduate from high school here, or they're going to get this here, or Social Security is going to kick in at 62. I'm now 42, so I've got 20 years. I think you visually sometimes plan those things out, but you don't write it down. And it's funny, my really dear friend Roseanne sent me a note about the workbook coming out, and she's like, I have plans for everything else. Why don't I have one for my life? And I just don't think people have thought about it. And the thing that's ultimately what's led to this, there are books out there about life planning. And I've read some of them. I've looked at most of them, but I haven't read a lot of them. But they're really long. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like, how much time do you have to read about that? So I wanted to do something that was really, truly a workbook like we got in school. Mm-hmm. When we were in grade school, we all had workbooks.
We did.
It's like, how do you develop a life plan? And let's make it really easy. This workbook is an hour reading max. Melinda would tell you it's 2 hours. So, so that we have some
she's probably like
that.
Me, where you have to go back and you're kind of like,
yes.
Is that really what that meant?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, she is. And exactly. And
My
I've read it
like,
500 times. Yeah, but this is a workbook, so it allows you to go and do it, and you can either do it on your own or with your spouse or partner or with a friend. So you can
do this by yourself?
You can absolutely do this by yourself.
Okay.
There are some couples that might have their own individual life plans. Ideally, you do it together, but you could do it with a best friend. You could do it lots of different ways. But the key is having something I think really visual that you can go back and look at. And this is kind of a 4-step process, so it takes you into some really interesting questions to have you look at your soul. Mm-hmm. We have people write your obituary as part of this process. What do you want the world to read about you when you die? Yeah. And think about that, and that's very illuminating. But there are lots of other things to think about. And then I love that notion too, is as you start doing some soul searching of letting things just churn. Mm-hmm. And so we want people to take some time to churn, and then spend a day or a half day. It actually comes down to doing their life plan, and it's a big visual timeline.
So do you think this is something mostly for Gen Xers, or do you think, because I've noticed like a lot of millennials are just like on the seat of their pants.
Yeah, they are.
I feel like they're a little more lost than we were.
Yeah.
when I was in, I mean, at least I had some sort of direction, like I need to get a job.
Yeah.
I need to go to school. I need, this is what I'm doing. So I was just really curious about, like.
Yeah. It's a
How
great
do you turn
question.
them on to this?
Well, it's a really great question, and I think it's something that this is my first interview talking about the workbook. So, and I think come back. Let's ask that question.
Because even baby boomers.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. If my mom was here, she would say, "I want 15-year-olds to do this." I think it's really imperative that kids who are sophomores, juniors, seniors in high school start doing this now to look at their lives. So that's her point of view. Mm-hmm. We took our eldest daughter and her partner through this process together, and it was really amazing. They're both, this was a couple years ago. No, it was last year. And they're in their early 20s, and for them it was really illuminating. And her partner turned and she's like, "Oh my God, my parents are going to be 70 next year. What does that mean?" And they hadn't really looked at their life in a visual process and realized, okay, I'm 22. I'm going to live to 82 or 92. It's like there's 70 years. What am I going to do with this? So the visual process for them in their early 20s was amazing. Gen Xers, great. The other thing that was really interesting, so my counselor, Noreen Goncheski, who's an amazing woman, she's now over in Bend. She does wonderful marital counseling and other things. But I had her look at this, and one of the things she came back at me and gave me some really great feedback. She's like, "Lee, you need to write something about for people 60 plus, because 60 plus have a whole nother set of needs and they need a life plan." She said, "Do you know what the divorce rate is for people 60 plus?"
Yep.
It's 25%. People are, when they're 60 plus, are looking at, sowing their oats and doing some different things, or they have different goals. How do you have them plan together?
And a lot of them are still working.
Yes.
There's a lot of, with 2008 hitting us, 2009, and like people still have not bounced back. Like my grandmother has not bounced back.
Yeah.
I mean, she lost everything.
Yeah, no.
During that. I mean,
exactly.
Thanks to like a horrible money manager person at the time and just some bad mistakes that she made.
Right.
But she's in her 80s now. I mean, she's okay.
Right.
But at the same time, my grandfather, gone, she's divorced. I mean, what do you do with your life?
Right.
One of, it's really interesting, Carmen Farmer, who is a new coach, she does retirement coaching. She's a happiness retirement coach.
Great.
So she works with people that are retiring or about ready to retire on like, what do you want your life to look at?
It's hugely
because
important.
What she did, she ended up sitting. And, you get depressed, and you can't find your tribe and people are passing away. I mean, at my age... You don't have
the social connections, you get isolated.
Exactly.
A host of things. And I think a lot of people truly haven't looked hard. In fact, one of the things I need to do now, because I'll be 60 in 2 years, I really want to look at what do I really see that lifetime being. It's interesting. So my mom taught a whole series of classes called 60, 70, 80, Now What? For women. And mom gave me, her name is Melinda, she gave me a ton of great advice on this, but there's a whole section on here for 60 plus about, because the notion of retirement is changing. What do you want this all to be? We can't afford to retire, as in your grandma's case. So I think we need to look at all those things. The other thing that's just very cool, and again, credit to mom, who's going to no doubt be listening to this.
Hi, Mom.
But one of the things she came to me, she said, "Have you read Jane Fonda's book about the third phase?" And she's like, it used to be 60 plus was when you'd be starting to prepare for the downward cycle and eventually dying. That is not the case anymore. And the fact of the matter is 60 plus is 40 plus 20 years ago. We are living so much longer now. It's absolutely amazing. And so Jane Fonda has this wonderful book, and she talks about how to evaluate the first two phases or three phases. No, it was the first two phases of life, knowing that there was going to be a third phase. And now people are talking about there being a fourth phase. But what do you want that to be? And if you look at what Jane did, who's just fantastic, she reinvented herself completely. Her career is hotter today than it was in the 60s.
Well, I don't know. Barbarella was pretty good.
Barbarella wasn't Barbarella. Oh my gosh. If you haven't seen Barbarella, everybody, see Barbarella.
So my husband has never seen Barbarella, and so I made him watch Barbarella, and he was like, what the
heck was that? I saw it in Fifth Avenue Cinema here in Portland. I was like, that is bizarre.
It was pretty.
But it was fantastic.
It was fantastic.
Got to see it again.
So, it's funny because I married somebody that's 10 years younger than me.
Yep.
So I have an 18-year-old now, sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So guess who's going to get something for Christmas?
She should get that.
She needs to get
Yeah,
this.
no.
Because I see a lot of kids, because my sister is really a lot younger than me too.
Yeah.
And I see kids that are like 13, 14, and there's two different kinds of kids at 13, 14. There's the ones that are planners.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
They have this, they know what college they're going to.
It's so true.
They're starting businesses. And then you have the other people that are just like, what am I doing?
Who hadn't had the exposure.
Social
They've not
media.
gone out. No.
So,
and it's so important. I think it's amazing. I think the young people today are incredibly inspirational because so many of them are planning and thinking and doing things, which is amazing. But then I think there are some that are still kind of cloistered and haven't gotten out and seen the real world. We talked about restaurants. I mean, my first job was in a restaurant. It was the best first job.
Yes.
And go get a job at Baskin Robbins or at a restaurant. But but I think it's important that we start having these conversations earlier, and they're really smart. They're still, I'm going to get verklempt here. What's really amazing, I think, about young people today, I talk to a lot of high schoolers, is they're really smart. They see lots of different things, but they still have very young hearts, and they still need coaching and help, and I hope that this will help them, and I can't wait to hear what they say about it, because we'll get lots of feedback. This is our first run, and my goal is that ultimately we'll have this community, a tribe of intentional life planners who are going to give us suggestions and other things, and we'll just make this better and better. And if we do that and change a few lives, that would be fantastic.
So I know it's not coming out until December 31st.
Actually, it's coming out. We've moved up the date.
You moved up the date.
It's going to come out December 1st.
Awesome.
So it's coming out next Friday.
So Christmas presents for everybody.
Christmas presents for everybody.
So where's it going to be available?
It's going to be available two places for now. So right now it's going to be on Amazon.com and it'll be on rightopenact.com. So we have a website. So it'll be at both of those places.
And I'll put a link on the show notes
exactly.
for everybody.
Locally here in Oregon, I'm going to go hit up some local booksellers. I've got another job, so it's like, okay, we'll make this happen over time. And in fact, as soon as I leave here, I'm going to go drop it off at Powell's, and we'll see if they want to take it. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
The bookstore I grew up with, we'll see what happens. But right now, Amazon and rightopenact.com.
So a quick question. Not quick. None of my questions are quick.
We'll just gab forever here.
I know we can. So what has been your biggest challenge?
Oh, my biggest challenge. That's a really good question. I haven't been asked that question. I think for me, biggest challenge, life throws things at you and you go through different things. We all get hurt. There's my favorite movie of all time is Harold and Maude. Mm-hmm. Maude, that's how I survived high school. So in high school, I was really skinny. Uh-huh. No girls wanted to date me in high school because as my daughter, Sophie, said, "You had chicken legs, Dad," when she saw an early picture of me. But, but Maude and Harold and Maude, if you haven't seen that, add
Harold
that to the list.
and Maude is really, really good.
It's the best. But, Maude said, Harold, go out, take a risk, take a chance, get hurt even. And she said, otherwise you got nothing to talk about in the locker room. So I think, we've all been hurt, and I think that's been a hard thing. I've been divorced before, once or twice, and learning from that has been, I think, a hard thing for me. We all have struggles. So I think for me, getting through those in a healthy fashion. I think, my first divorce, I decided I was going to be nothing but healthy. So I wasn't going to drink alcohol or smoke or do other things.
I did the exact same thing.
I was just going to
went 90 days sober.
Yeah, nope, just like you got to embrace the pain. So
yes.
I think we all have those things. I think, but I think we all need help. And I think that's a key thing.
How do you ask for help?
Well, I think you've got to see who you can trust, who's gone through some of these things. I think one of the lovely things starting this business, I went to other people who had started PR practices and said, would you give me some advice? And people were willing to do that. It was such a gift and so miraculous that they wanted to do that. But I think you got to pay that back. I mean, those folks like Debbie and Meredith, I need to help other people along the way. So, my view as a Jewish man is we need to leave the world better than we found it, and we've got to do mitzvahs and we've got to keep returning the favor. I'm not perfect, never will ever claim to it, but if I can, keep doing that, hopefully I can make up for some of the things I've done, the missteps. But I think you got to go ask. The wonderful thing, gosh darn it, Facebook is fabulous. And they're also a client, so, but this is not an ad for Facebook. I think it's two things on Facebook. We've had some challenges in our family with family health, and I put a note. It was so funny. My friend Deb Pleva, who works with us, at one point we needed to find some care, and she said, "I know somebody who knows everything." And I said, "Really? Who's that?" She goes, "Lee Weinstein. Do you know how many Facebook followers he has?" You put it out to Facebook. Say, "Hey, does anybody know anybody who could, do this?" And oh my gosh, the community answers. With this workbook, I wasn't sure if we were going to go out, and I wanted to get this out right away. So I wasn't sure I wanted to take three years and go find a publisher and an agent and all that stuff, or if we'd self-publish. So I put it out on Facebook and said, "Hey, who knows somebody who does self-publishing?" And it was amazing. I got this great conversation going, and Melinda's friend came back and said, "You need to talk to Jane Lemos." And Jane brokers books. She's a book producer, and she's been phenomenal on this. So I think we just got to go out and ask. Sometimes some of us are introverts. Some of us don't feel trusting. Some of us have been burned. So I think we need to be careful how we do that. But you can also ask friends to ask for you, I think it's important to ask for help. And I think we all at times need help and need to do that. So, and we're entering a really tough time for the next 2 months with the holidays coming up. It's really hard on a lot of people. The light deprivation here in Oregon, ask for help. There are people out there that are happy to help, and just put it out there.
Well, that's all the time we have. But I have to have you come back because I really want to talk to you, since I've known you for so long, really about social media and how that's changed the PR world, because it's changed a lot.
Great.
And then come back and give us an update
on
this. So how can people get a hold of you? Before I forget this question.
Yeah, come to rightopenact.com. You can email me at info@rightopenact.com. And please join our community. I really want to get feedback and input on this.
Is it a Facebook community?
It's a Facebook community.
Cool.
We have Instagram. What else do we have? So those are kind of the two principal places to begin with right now. But, the cool thing I think is going to be about this is getting everybody's input on it. And we'll see where this thing goes. But it's going to be fun. And I just hope if we make a few more people's lives great, that would be wonderful, or even slightly more productive. That would be great.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Annie, very much.
It's been really wonderful to get, to hear what you've been doing and what's going on, just catch up. And also, I hope everybody out there really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you for joining us today. And have a wonderful, blessed day. And don't forget to review and subscribe to Find Your Tribe. Have a great day. Find Your Tribe podcast is a conversation with guests addressing all aspects of what makes our businesses and personal lives unique. We will balance traditions with new methods, respecting the past while acknowledging the need to embrace new methods and technologies. Finding Your Tribe podcast uncovers the personalities behind the businesses, the leaders who paved the way, and the essential heart of what makes our tribes run. Please visit me at annieweller.com for more information.